Hey now, yesterday I made another batch of brie cheese, which is super delightful. I can't wait for that batch to be done, although I'm going to have to wait because it's several weeks away. And I did reserve the whey from that batch, and because I don't like to just toss stuff out until I've gotten as much out of it as I possibly can, today I'm going to make some whey ricotta. So I've got my whey reserved in the same pot that I used to make my brie. I'm going to just try to gently stir them here. You can see I've got it here in this pot. I just had this covered up, and that was in the refrigerator, keeping it nice and cold. Ideally, a person would use this within a few hours of actually collecting, but I had it in the fridge just to hopefully slow down that bacterial activity so it wouldn't get too sour. However, tasting it, there is just a little bit of acidity to it, which is no problem. I don't mind that in my ricotta, so it's still going to be good to use. And I'm going to use that whey as well as a gallon of some whole milk. Now this is actually homogenized milk, which isn't a problem for making whey ricotta. I'm just going to be adding a little calcium chloride to help things move along. If you do have a gallon of non-homogenized, that's always sort of a better choice when it comes to making cheese. However, this will be just fine for this ricotta. So here we go, setting off on a journey to make the most of that whey and come up with some delicious ricotta that we can play around with and use in a few different ways. So come along for the ride. Now, like I said, I'm starting off with a gallon of this whey here. I'm just filling up this pitcher. Now, you'll see that I'm not really terribly worried about sterilization or anything like that at this point. That's because we are going to be heating up this whey to quite a warm temperature here, so that's going to take care of anything that's inside of the whey at the moment. However, with the tools that I'm going to be employing in this process, after that point, I'm going to have all of that sterilized, and that's just using a 75% isopropyl alcohol solution, giving it a spray, letting it dry off, and it's good to use. So because I have this whey in the pot that I'm going to be using to make my ricotta, I've just transferred some out here. I'm going to sadly get rid of this remaining whey and then pour this back into the pot. For that, I'm also not worried about completely cleaning out this pot or anything before adding this whey back in. Now you do have some options for how to heat everything up here. What would be sort of ideal is if you were using a hot water bath. I do like to use that when I make my brie and some other cheeses here, using my precision cooker, create a nice sort of hot water bath with that. However, because we're wanting to get this so warm, I find that that's not ideal because I like to use my plastic meat tubs for that. So I do not want to get that temperature as high as I would need to. Now, if you did have a much larger pot than the pot that you need here for the actual whey ricotta, you could certainly make a hot water bath with that. Just get some water boiling on the inside, and then you would place this pot into it and start to add your ingredients. Now for me, I just have this on the stovetop here. I've got my whisk, which of course, as I've said, is sterilized with that isopropyl alcohol, and I'm going to leave my whisk in here. I'm going to cover it up, and every minute or so, I'm just going to sit there and kind of get a little gentle whisking up so that we're not risking scalding any of the milk on the bottom here. And I do have this just sort of on a medium-low heat. I've got my thermometer here in the milk, and I'm tracking the temperature. Our target temp is actually 192 degrees Fahrenheit. And when I talk about slowly heating this up, we want this to take probably about 20 minutes to get to that temperature, so it is a relatively gentle heat that we're applying here, even if we are using a hot water bath. All right, now before I hit 100 degrees Fahrenheit, I am just going to take some calcium chloride. It's 1/8 of a teaspoon, diluted in right around 1/8 of a cup of distilled water. I'm going to pour that in here, and then I'm going to mix this up. I can see that some of the curds are already separating out, but this is just going to help us in that process. So because I was heating here just from the bottom, I didn't have the efficiency of the hot water bath. This did take me longer. It was closer to 45 minutes in order to get up to this 190, 192 degree range. At this point, I'm going to remove my thermometer, and we're going to further acidify, which I'm doing with 3.5 tablespoons of 5% acetic acid white vinegar. And now I'm going to just sit here and gently whisk it to mix it in for about 20 or 30 seconds. And I'm also just going to turn off the heat here. And now that that vinegar is totally mixed in, I'm going to cover this up and let it rest for 15 minutes. After 15 minutes here, I'm going to pop off the lid, just using a clean rubber scraper. Just give a little run around the edge in case anything was slightly stuck to it. And now here I have prepared, this is just a non-reactive stainless bowl. And I've got a stainless sieve here, and I'm going to be collecting the curds in this. I also just have this colander in here because it's just a nice way for me to be able to hold that in place. Then I also have some cheesecloth here. I'm just going to dampen it. You could do that with water, or like I just did, dip it in to some extra whey that I've got, and then wring it out. I'm just going to place it inside the sieve just so that it overlaps slightly. And using a slotted spoon, I'm going to start to remove curds from the pot. I'm going to get them all into here and let them drain. Now, once I've got what I think is reasonably scoopable out of here, I like to take it and actually dump it out into another bowl. And now in a move that feels almost like cheating, we're actually just going to pour in a few different batches here the contents of this pot through this strainer and collect anything else that we can. After running the rest of that whey through this cheesecloth, you can see how much extra ricotta I picked up here. So I'm just going to combine that all together. So we let this drain for about 10 to 15 minutes. You can choose exactly how dry you want your ricotta to get. We like it right around this consistency here. You also have the option of choosing if you want to salt it or not. If you are, some nice fine sea salt, anywhere from maybe a teaspoon to a tablespoon, just depending how salty you would like it. We like to have this a little bit more on the sweet side, so I'm not bothering to salt this cheese. Now, this ricotta is incredibly versatile. You could use this in cooking if you wish. I'm just going to prepare this here for a nice little dessert treat for the kids, similarly to what my wife had as a child when she was visiting Portugal and her family over there, with a little bit of cinnamon and some sugar. Now that's really delightful. You get that nice spice out of the cinnamon, a lot of that sweetness, and then that rich, that protein-rich ricotta coming out of there. There you have it, a great way, see what I did there? To take that leftover whey from a day of cheese making and just adding some milk, going through a little bit more of a process there, and winding up with, in this case, it was well over 4 cups worth of ricotta cheese, and for less than the price of just a gallon of regular whole milk from the grocery store. Again, some options in how you wish to finish it, how dry you would like it, whether you want it salty or perhaps going with something a little bit sweet. But either way, very versatile, easy to make. And if you give this a whirl, please let me know how it turns out for you, how you like it, and what you chose to do with it. And until next time, keep your weight at 11.